Mr. Giovanni Gallo has over 20 years experience, and held different positions within the UN system, both in the headquarters and in the field. Between 2011 and 2019, he was the Director General of the United Nations Office in Vienna and Executive Director of UNODC until 2014. He's been serving as a senior legal advisor to the Director General and Executive Director. He currently heads the thematic support section of the Corruption and Economic Crime branch here in UNODC. Mr. Giovanni, you're welcome, and over to you to give your welcome remarks.
Princess, thank you very much for this warm introduction, and a warm welcome to all of you from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and a warm welcome in particular to this first of a series of webinars on global webinars on business integrity that UNODC is happy to organize in cooperation with our friends and colleagues from the United Nations Global Compact. This is an important initiative for us, and the choice of this week to launch the first of this webinar series was not coincidental. We celebrated last week the International Anti-Corruption Day on the 9th of December. And the International Anti-Corruption Day this year marks the beginning of a year-long campaign to mark the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, adopted by General Assembly indeed in 2003. And these dates are significant because 2003 is the year of the adoption of the convention, and 2004 is the year of the adoption of the 10th principle of the United Nations Global Compact, which is the anti-corruption principle. It's the principle according to which business should work against corruption in all its forms and manifestations, including bribery and extortion. Extortion is mentioned for the first time, recognizing that business can be obviously also on the receiving end of a request for bribery. So all these dates are significant and important for us and are the background for the launch of this webinar series. And I'm glad to see a diversity of colleagues in attendance, different industries, different sizes, but also representative of civil society, of the public sphere. And of course, I wish to thank all the speakers, the senior speakers who will be moderating and facilitating this discussion going forward. One of the goals of UNODC over the past 16, 17 years of engagement in the field of corruption, anti-corruption in the private sector has been to modify or strengthen legal frameworks, to provide greater space for public-private dialogue, and support business efforts to advance integrity and accountability efforts. This is exactly in line with one of our objectives, to provide a space for public-private dialogue to be conducted and for good practices and the ideas to be shared and promoted. So with this introduction, and thanking, of course, my colleague Princess for the moderation of these and the other webinars, I thank you once again for your presence here. I thank our speakers, and I wish you a very productive discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giovanni. Always a great pleasure having you in one of these webinars. So we'll move straight into the panel discussion. The panel discussion is going to be in two parts. We'll have a technical presentation from our United Nations Global Compact partners first, and then we go into the real panelist, discussion, where we'll have different expertise speaking to the topic. To do justice to the technical presentation is my colleague, Ms. Christina Ritter, who is the head of governance and anti-corruption of UN Global Compact. Christina is an attorney at law specialized in business administration with over 16 years professional experience in the United Nations and private sector. She, prior to joining her current position at UNGC, Ms. Ritter has been working with the Corruption and Economic Crime branch. So literally, she just left us to go start take up this position. Here in CEB, she was the alternate coordinator of the American for the implementation thematic support session. It used to be the implementation support section. She acted as a regional advisor for Latin America and coordination of the corruption programmatic areas. She covered close to 24 countries while serving as a regional advisor. So Miss Christina, over to you for the technical presentation. You have about 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Princess. Let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. So I have the honor to kickstart this global webinar series on business integrity with today's topic, Tone from the Top. And well, as Princess said, I just started working for the UN Global Compact last week. And before that, I was with UNODC around 9 years. So I'm very excited about this collaboration, and I'm sure there will be many more to come. So as a new staff of the UN Global Compact, I feel it is my duty to mention the 10 principles of the Global Compact, and in particular, Principle 10, which requires our members to develop policies and concrete programs and strategies to address corruption. Of course, by doing this, companies are at the same time contributing to the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 16, which also focuses on reducing corruption and bribery in all of its forms. So doing this, integrating these policies in the day-to-day operations of the company, of course, is no easy task, is a very complex one, and requires really strong leadership. Leadership that will put in place a governance structure that will drive change in the company. So I want to quickly refer to the management model created by the UN Global Compact with the support of Deloitte, because it is the inspiration for this global webinar series, first of all, but also because even if I know not all of you are members of the Global Compact, the 6 steps of the management model still are very useful for any company that has the intention of developing a program or a strategy to address corruption. And it all starts with the first step, which is the topic of our webinar today, the commitment from leadership. So at the highest level, there's got to be a decision to fight corruption. And for the Global Compact, this means the CEO with the board of directors publicly expressing the commitment to stakeholders to address corruption. And this commitment doesn't stop there, doesn't stop with the registration, but it's put in motion through allocating enough financial resources, employees to this task. So let's take a closer look at exactly how can a company achieve this? How can leadership achieve it? So the tone from the top basically refers to that support, that commitment of the senior management, in this case, to anti-corruption. And of course, leadership defines the norms, the values of a company, and hopefully these values will include principles of integrity, transparency, and accountability. But actions are stronger than words, right? So it is important not to just stop there, but to also articulate a zero tolerance policy to corruption and reflect support and appraisal for that, for those values and this policy constantly, permanently, also by maybe developing an effective anti-corruption program that includes policies, mechanisms, and procedures to get us there, right? So let's see how to put this tone from the top into action. We can see in the screen 4, I guess, ways to do this. And the first step would be to ensure commitment throughout the company. So it is definitely the responsibility of leadership to ensure that all employees and relevant partners are aware of the values and the norms of the company. But not only that, they must also be aware of the consequences or the sanctions for not adhering to the zero tolerance policy for corruption. So in order to achieve this, leadership must establish responsibilities throughout the company, right? Because in a larger company, for example, it is really unlikely that the CEO could be in regular contact or engage regularly with all of the employees of the company. So the first step would be to establish and delegate responsibilities. So maybe one person, a team, a compliance officer, to make sure that the commitment to anti-corruption is known, is understood, and is expressed at every level. Again, in parallel for achieving this, leadership must allocate enough resources, financial resources, but also human resources with the appropriate skills to do so. And for me, this aspect reflects directly the seriousness and the sincerity, really, of the intention to address corruption. Because you can come up with a really wonderful strategy, but if you don't invest in its implementation, then we might as well just forget about it. So maybe hire a consultant, an expert to review the quality of the program is a way to show that commitment and that tone from the top. And finally, define scope and extent of the program. So these anti-corruption programs of ethics and compliance have elements that are oftentimes already established by the law sometimes or by standards and good practices. However, leadership can still decide how far they would go. And an example of doing this is by joining a voluntary initiative such as the UN Global Compact, but also maybe engaging, participating in a collective action initiative. So that's why on the screen you can see a little playbook on anti-corruption collective action that we recently launched. So stay tuned because more capacity building activities will for sure come on that topic thanks to Siemens. Okay, let me go to the next one. So to wrap it up, I just wanted to mention specific concrete actions that leadership can take to show its support. Basically, it's engaging in the program, in the anti-corruption program, and its improvement process, because it's really important. I've seen this before, that we spend a lot of time developing the program, months and months of work, of consultations, internally, externally, maybe a launch with confettis and whistles, but then it's launched and we forget about it. That is what we should not do, exactly. So it cannot be a one-off thing. Support, the tone from the top must be constant, must be permanent and frequent. So actions that leadership can take, we can see on the screen, besides joining a voluntary initiative that I just mentioned, speaking at employees' meetings, board meetings about the importance, the rationality behind the program, praising publicly those employees who apply the values or who contribute to the program, addressing relevant business partners and stakeholders, citing the anti-corruption commitment in the annual report, participating in training and communication activities are all ways to show the commitment, the support, the tone from the top. And most importantly, and this is the last thing, by behaving as a role model. And I'm not just saying this, studies have revealed that when facing a challenging situation, an employee will think about what their boss would do in this situation and imitate that behavior as the right course of action. So think about it for a second. That's exactly what I would do if I would face a challenging situation. I would think about what my boss would say, would do, and I would try to do the same, right? Because I don't want to get fired. So this just goes to show the power of behaving as a role model. And even Albert Einstein has recognized that. You can see the quote on the screen, setting an example is not the main means of influencing others. It is the only means, and especially in smaller companies where the CEO his behavior is under scrutiny constantly because of this, of being so close to the employees and the business partners. So that is a message that I want to leave as food for thought. And thank you for your attention. I leave my contact there. Princess, over to you.
Thank you. And just in time, I was sort of going through the time and I was like, but yes, thank you very much, Christina. And thank you for also setting the tone for the talk, literally, the discussion on the tone for the talk. So we will move straight into hear from the panelists. We've heard from what the principles are, what is encouraged, but let's hear from people who actually have experience. To do justice to that, I have three good panelists from different parts of the world, all CEOs in their own right with several years of experience, to share with us their experience. Again, I want to encourage participants to use the chat menu to make their contributions, ask questions to any of the panelists or presentations that have been made, and we'll take time at some point to take the one we can. So with us today is Mr. Mohammed Adil. Mr. Mohammed Adil is an entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Amentis Technology Private Limited, a group of 9 companies working in the field of IT, infrastructure, business setup consulting, printing and packaging. Amentis has offices in 5 countries, including US, UK, UAE, Pakistan, and India. Mr. Adil is a professional with over 20 years experience in the areas of business strategy, business operation, sales and marketing, and new initiative. He continues to work in several continents across the world on business. You're welcome. Good to have you, Mr. Adil. And then we also have with us Miss Catherine Musakali. Miss Catherine is the director of Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA, and also the chairperson of the Governance and Leadership Board Committee, also in KEPSA. Miss Catherine sits on the board of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, the apex organization of the private sector in Kenya. The KEPSA itself brings together local and foreign business association, chambers of commerce, professional bodies, corporates from multinational companies, SMEs and startups from all sectors of the economy. KEPSA's role is to enable them speak with one voice when engaging governments, development partners, and other stakeholders on cross-cutting policy issues and programs for socioeconomic development of the country. She also, she's a past chairman and fellow of the institutes and a member of the Law Society of Kenya, holding LLB and LLM from the University of Nairobi. She's also a managing partner of Dorian Associates, LLP, a firm specializing in corporate governance consultancy. She's previously served as head of legal and company secretary of Shell in Kenya and Tanzania, and was responsible for legal services for Shell companies in Eastern Africa and North Africa. We're very happy to have you here with us, Ms. Catherine.
Thank you, Princess.
And then we have our young, able entrepreneur, Mr. Felipe Roman Veloso, who not just an entrepreneur, but a business management and IT expert. He used to be the SEO of Let's Jam and currently the CTO and COO of Omani. His experience in operational and strategic planning, CRM, account and project management, product development, and legacy code and infra management. Mr. Felipe actually has a very big goal to learn and grow a team to reach its potential by creating an environment of trust and accountability. Over the last few years, he has been focusing on using empathy, team trust, and on how to improve communication and interaction between people to achieve better results. He has also worked as a project manager in various capacity and organization. So good to have you here with us, Mr. Felipe.
Thank you, Princess. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to be here speaking about this very important matter. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and we also have also from Amitis, Mr. Haroon Hammett, who is also actually on standby to help out just because of connectivity issues every now and then. But he's also very experienced in the field of business management, and he's going to be standby and make some contribution to our topic at some point in time. So, Mr. Haroon Hammett, very nice to meet you as well. Okay, all right. So without further ado, let's go to the basis. Just so that we have a very interactive sessions. We'll go. I'm going to kind of pick questions to not just to one person, but to all of you. But I will try to based on your response, I would take it up from there and see how we have a more interactive session. So as a panelist, I encourage you to feel free to respond to one another. If you feel you do not agree with a specific panel, feel free to raise your hand. Use the raise hand function so that I know that when you want to speak and I can call on you. I also ask that you sort of give time for others to speak. So I would say when you're giving your response, let's try to be as concise as possible so that we can have everyone speak to the topic. So I'll start with Mr. Adil. You've heard the presentation from the Global Compact and also what UNODC, Mr. Giovanni actually earlier presented. Now, tell us, do you agree? To what extent does leadership influence zero tolerance of anti-corruption within an organization?
Thank you, Princess. I'm very thankful to be part of this, the webinar series, and I'm happy to be here. And thank you very much for Mr. Christina. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right. It is always very difficult when you're speaking to people all around the world, to pronouncing their names. So, the presentation has been, a very good one, and we appreciate all the content and the quotes she has been sharing on that. I mean, since the topic of the topic is the tone from the top, is yes, of course. If I am the leader of the group or a leader of the company where a lot of other people are working in, and I want to make sure that everyone is actually following the tone and following, the matter of the integrity, I have to be very much clear in myself, right? If I'm leading from the front, then I'll be able to transform the same ideas into the whole organization. So if I'm accountability, if I'm accountable, I'm giving myself as an accountable for all the standards that I've set in my company, of course, then everyone will have to follow that. So yes, it is very, very important in a key role while you are actually, sitting on the top. If you are, losing the rope, then it means that everyone will actually go through it. One more thing I want to say that it is much important for yourself to be actually more interactive with all of your employees. So when you are actually interactive with your all of employees, you know each and everyone, you share with good laughs with them, you play cricket with them, you move around with them, you go on dinners with them. It gives you help to understand more their problems and their issues, and maybe one of that is actually having some problems or some issues, and they are not able to, speak directly to their manager, or their managers are having some, bad impact or something like that, that where they are not actually, actually following the policy. then it is quite easy for them to reach out to the group owners easily if you are interacting with them. So this is another point I want to mention here, that it has to be very interactive with your employees while you're working, so they can come anytime to you and discuss their problems and ideas and the malpractices or the corrupt practices happening inside the company, so you can stop straight away from that. So yes, the zero tolerance policy is very much important, and when I am using a zero tolerance policy for myself, then of course it is for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adil. I mean, just one key point, just to summarize the key point you said, to a large extent, you do think that leadership has a very strong role in ensuring that zero tolerance policy in organizations. I would ask the same question to Felipe. Do you want to add anything to what
sure.
Mr. Adil has said?
Yes, for sure. Getting from even the point where Mr. Adil left, getting to know your people, your company employees, sets a lot of structure to understand where are the pain points, where are their needs, and if they really are like pushed to a corner economically, they may be susceptible for some type of corruption. So if you know them, know their struggles, and help them to achieve their objectives in a clean way, in a proper and correct way, they will be really glad, and they will follow your lead on the anti-corruption position. For example, a numerous time I found out some of my employees were like in deep debt of credit card because they had no financial education. So they were doing crazy stuff to keep like their credit score and make the machine running. And after we taught them how to manage their money, how to make reserves, how to call the bank and deal with their debt and negotiate that, they kind of overcome it and became much more close to us, to the real matters, and we build trust with that. So building trust with your team and setting the tone of anti-corruption and zero tolerance, give the tone, and giving the examples and have a clear conversation with them around issues that happen. So more than have just a framework to follow through, what do you do when you have an incident? How do you proceed? What kind of transparency do you give to your own team? Because most of them already may know it from the insides of the corporate, of the company communications. And if you do that clearly, if you do that with transparency, they will trust you and you will build from that. So giving the tone of anti-corruption, not by just lip service, but knowing them, showing what's happening, showing the decisions, and helping them overcome their own difficulties, it's a great way to establish, especially for us, like small companies. We don't have much resources to apply in that dimension of business management, so we have to rely on this, people getting to know each other, giving empathy, helping them with their personal needs, and setting what does it mean having a zero tolerance on corruption or tone from the top. So that's what I was mainly wanted to add from Mr. Dio.
Thank you very much, Felipe. Ms. Catherine, I'd like to go to you. And I mean, the question we've seen a trend of, sorry, I hear a sound in the background. Okay, I think that's been fixed now. There's been a recent high trend of corruption issues in the private sector. Do you think that leaders are actually paying lip service to ethics and anti-corruption policies? I mean, we know, especially with big organizations, they do tend to have that. But why are we seeing such high trends more recently? You're muted, Catherine. You need to unmute yourself, please.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Princess. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. You raise a very important issue. That there's been a lot of discussion, and is it that leaders are paying lip service? I think we are hearing a lot of noise in the system because people are more aware and people are raising issues. If you think about a leader as somebody who determines the direction of an organization, and that leader has enabled organizations and people within that organization to raise concerns, to speak out against corruption and matters of ethics, then actually the noise is not such a bad thing to have, because the noise then makes it possible for the leaders to sort out the problems that are there. When it happens that there is noise in the system and leaders are not actually sorting out those problems, then there is a problem. And I think for me, matters of corruption, matters of ethics actually go beyond the law. So it's not that leaders are adhering to the law. Leaders should actually hold themselves accountable. Leaders should find that they themselves are accountable to the stakeholders of the organization. And therefore, listening to, the matters being raised within the organization, the cases being reported, and constantly updating the strategies within the organization, the policies within the organization to deal with instances of corruption. It's a very personal question, to be honest. And whilst on the one hand, you might say people are paying lip service, many times it is actually when you go into a specific organization and look at what happened, for you to actually know whether the leadership is paying attention or it's just paying lip service. So it's a mixed bag, if you ask me. There are organizations which are very, very serious about matters corruption. There are organizations which may actually be top dressing some of these matters. And that's why organizations such as KEPSA, for example, are very important, because they then encourage their membership to take these matters seriously and deal with issues of corruption, matters of ethics, so on and so forth. Thank you, Princess.
Thank you very much. I mean, I want to kind of dig a little more on what you said, and then ask another question about what tools and techniques do you think leaders can then use to effectively to ensure that they actually are dealing with issues of corruption in their organizations?
Right. Thank you very much. Now, I will, as I answer your question, I will give an example of what we have done at KEPSA. It started with KEPSA influencing government, and it's a lot to do with discussions, and this was said by Christine, dialogue between public sector and private sector. And one of the things that we did was to, drive the enactment of the Bribery Act in Kenya. Following up on that enactment of the Bribery Act, we went ahead and did a corruption risk mapping within the private sector. So it was very clear to us where is corruption happening, what is causing the corruption within the private sector, and what solutions could we have within the private sector. Based on that, we then went ahead and drafted a code of conduct and ethics that could be adopted by members of KEPSA, so that they can then drive the anti-corruption agenda within the organization. Remember that KEPSA is a member of two organizations that are about anti-corruption initiatives, which is the UN Global Compact and the Blue Company, which is a local initiative within Kenya. So the law is one tool. Just to summarize, the law is one tool. But like I said, matters of corruption go beyond the law. They are actually a matter for the heart and the soul. I'm doing this because I believe it's the right thing to do, not because somebody is watching over me. The second issue is that code of conduct and ethics that organizations and leaders can use and cascade the same within the organization. The third tool is that example by the leaders themselves. I am doing the right thing. I hold myself accountable. I'm showing and leading you by example. The fourth tool that leaders can use is creating awareness and training within the organization. So it's good to have the law, it's good to have the code, it's good to have, whistleblowing mechanisms. But unless those initiatives are understood within the organization, then implementation will fall short. So making sure that you're using, disseminating your anti-corruption initiatives and training your staff constantly about what they should do should they come across instances of corruption and breach of ethics. That's another tool. The fourth tool I would like to speak about is whistleblowing mechanisms, enabling all within the organization and giving them the confidence to raise concerns when they come across matters of corruption. So that if I see something going wrong, I know I'm protected and I can speak up about it. So that is another tool that leaders within the organization can use. Perhaps I stop there, Princess, so that I allow others also to contribute.
Yes, I'm very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing some of those tools. And then I want to kind of take it to the SME. Mr. Felipe, I'll call you to this. Building on what Ms. Catherine just said, as a small organization, one of the things we tend to see is that many of the small medium enterprise usually have challenges having those tools in place. Then maybe you want to share with us your experience about what's ways SMEs could actually bring those tools on board, and to what extent would they really even find it helpful?
All right, thank you, Princess. I was crazy to talk about this because Humani mainly build software for HR tools. And one of those HR tools are feedback systems, right? So in feedback systems, you can create anonymous feedbacks. And with this simple tool of like building one-on-one capabilities or giving like an employee feedback, we're seeing a big raise in people using this kind of tool, especially with anonymous feedbacks, to have whistleblowing features and to communicate about abuses, even like home abuse, not related to work, but like some employee was saying she was like getting harassed by her husband. So she used an anonymous tool in the company to communicate about another stuff. So if you give people a way to safely communicate about this kind of situations, people will talk. Most of the times they were afraid of their security, because if some low rank person finds out about like high ranks corruption stuff, she will be mostly worried about her safety or his safety overall. So if you build mechanisms to give them the safety, you probably will discover a lot of stuff. But you have to do the other side to make sure this is a truthful whistleblowing, because with these tools, a lot of time we found that were fake whistleblowings, like some fake news or stuff like this, just to try to bring down people they're competing with. So these tools need to be used with great wisdom. But if you give like simple channels, like having an open room with one-on-one calls, you can like bring one each time to have like real talks, or make an after hours happy hours and have like really sincere talks with the people, so you can build trust with them. You don't need a tool to build trust. You need clear communications. So if you get close to your team, if you can build trust them, like with truthful caring about them. I see a lot of questions about, oh, how can the CEO get more close to the team? And you need to care about them. You need to have empathy about them. If you don't want to know other person's trouble, you will not get to know them, and they will not trust you to bring you the really matters and their concerns. So if you build trust and get close to them, you can get these tools without software or anything else. But there's a lot of software around with whistleblowing and this kind of mechanisms. We even built a whistleblowing feature that we cannot identify who sent it by any means. So we made it secure by design, because we had like people anchoring us to know who sent this message, who is talking about this, and we need to build a tool proper for this kind of situation.
Yeah, so let me interject there. I mean, you've talked a lot about, the whistleblower policy, but I like to ask, what about code of conduct? I mean, having code of conduct or code of ethics. I mean, most of the time we also find SMEs do not have this in place. Is this something that is difficult for SMEs to do? And if so, why? And if not, what should SMEs be doing? Why should they? Why is it important that they have that kind of tool in place, for instance?
I can speak mostly because for Brazil and Latin America, because I'm most close to like our national policies and stuff like this. It's really complicated, and most of the times, especially when I deal with developers, they get afraid if you put like a big fine for how can I say information leaks, and get worried. And we need really to build this trust with them and say, hey, this will never happen if you don't do wrong stuff. This is just a protection to make clear what are the penalties if you have a misconduct on this kind of data safety and stuff like this. And the same with corruption. If you have like big numbers and fines, people get, whoa, I don't have even assets. I'm done for life if I have something is not compliance with that policy. So you really need to go through each line with them to show how it's done. I have the lucky who have a business partner who is a lawyer, a criminal lawyer. So from day one, she wanted to have this kind of policies, and we have all these kind of documents well designed and reviewed and signed by our team. But most small companies don't have this kind of resources. So they just rely on like legal laws from the country, and they change from each country. They have different cultures. So if you're thinking about building a global startup, you have a need for an assessment, a consultancy around this to have a global policy for like crimes and corruptions and this kind of stuff. So if you have an entity like UNODC to provide a baseline for this, would be really helpful. But most companies just deal with it as it happens, because they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about the product fit, or to get investors, or to pitch their idea. And they only think about this when this happens. In my case, I was the reverse, because my business partner was a criminal lawyer. So she had around a lot of cases what may happen, and she was really cautious about building these baselines around these documents. But I think having a baseline document overall, like a global document for this kind of stuff, will be really helpful for any company.
Okay. I mean, I hear what you're saying. As an SME, it's not something that automatically comes to mind, because you're focused on trying to break even, make your profit, and it doesn't, immediately occur to most SMEs that they do have to have those things in place. But I see Miss Catherine's hand up. But before I come to you, Miss Catherine, I want to actually go to I have now Mr. Haroon, or is Mr. Adil still in place? Maybe Mr. Haroon, you can speak to Ametis, because Ametis has grown, or Mr. Adil. Okay, I have Mr. Adil here. You can speak a bit more on this, and maybe you can tell us more your journey, how you grew from a startup to where you are now, to almost a medium level, almost a big corporate organization. I mean, what was that journey process? Did you experience this type of challenge of not putting code of conduct, or creating training and awareness, or whistleblower policies in place? What was that like, and why? If I know now you have those in place, I mean, what is the experience? Maybe SMEs can learn more from you, and how you grew, and why you found those tools especially useful.
Well, thank you very much once again, Princess. We started a company as my partner.
Sorry, we can't hear you, sir. Mr. Adil, could you speak a bit louder?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Now we hear. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm actually gonna tell you a little bit background that how we started. I started this company around like 15 years ago. Me and my partner together. For initial like 3 to 4 years, we were the only two persons who were actually running this company, and we were doing the accounts, we were doing the technical side, we were doing almost everything together, and we have been doing it. And then we came to know that we need more hands to get over things and get in the growth pipeline. We have faced a lot of problems, like some of the people, some of the staff has been we hired, we rely on actually was part of some fraudulent things and some corrupt practices and everything, which time to time we had to foresee, and we had to terminate immediately and investigate properly. So, due to which we have faced many losses in past, right? And then, luckily we had a good chance actually to have Mr. Haroon, as an HR director, which actually comes in and actually, brought up a lot of, HR practices, SOPs, some procedures. We can actually improve that. I will actually go to, I would not waste my time explaining everything, because I think so, since he's part of my organization, he can explain you more that how actually he conducted, all these things, and he improved our systems accordingly. So over to Haroon Saab, you can explain more, about how we improve our stuff.
Thank you very much for sharing that experience. So, Catherine, I'll move over to you, and then Mr. Haroon.
Right. Thank you, Princess. I just wanted to comment.
Thank you, Adil. One comment I would like to add to the previous conversation
Sorry, Mr. Haroon. Miss Catherine first, then we'll come to you, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make a comment on what Felipe said about SMEs and code of conduct, so on and so forth. Now, one thing to note is building a corporate culture takes a lot of time, but dismantling a corporate culture takes even longer, takes more resources, and can be very, very painful and difficult. And therefore, it's very important that SMEs start their organizations on the right footing. And by doing so, putting in place all these policies, but please note that the policies, the size and complexity of the organization is important. So don't put in place these huge policies for very, small organizations. Policies must be commensurate with the size of the organization and the complexity. So I would encourage SMEs to have simple, clear policies that are well understood by everybody, that can be cascaded, that stakeholders can use to hold everybody accountable, and that can be very, very easily implemented without, wasting too much time. So don't download from the internet. Think about your specific circumstances, what corruption instances you are likely to face, and then address those. Thank you, Princess.
Thank you very much for those good points. Mr. Haroon, you wanted to add something? Let's hear from you. Mr. Haroon?
One is that whenever you are making the policies, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we
can you hear me?
Could you turn on your camera so we see you?
Yeah. My camera is turned on. Is it visible to you now?
Not yet, but continue. I think it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. One thing which is very much important while you are designing your policies, like Catherine said, you have to have a step-by-step approach in the developing policies and procedures, and when you're setting up rules for the organization, or you're setting up the structures. You don't have to have very huge structures in the organization at a very start. So that is very much important. Secondly, whenever you are designing the policy, you have actually designed the policies. People are talking about, like Adil mentioned, like Philippe mentioned, like the Catherine mentioned, you have got policies in place, you have got whistleblowing policy, you have got ethical policy, a code of conduct policy and everything. Organizations, especially the SMEs, do make these policies, but they share those policies in their cupboards. They don't those policies, they don't train on those policies to the employees, and employees does not even know. So whenever the incident happens, all of a sudden the HR brings the policy of an employee.
I think, Mr. Haroon, there's a problem with your connection. We can't hear you very well.
You were supposed to do this. So the best approach is whenever you design
I guess this is a problem of.
Okay, I think, Mr. Haroon, we can't hear you very well. Sorry, I think it's a issue of network, so we can't hear you very well. But I want to kind of go to the audience. I see one or two questions coming up for the panelists, and I have one here that says, how can business leaders influence the tone from the middle, so the way middle management acts? Does any of you want to speak to that question, perhaps?
Princess, I can start off.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
I can start off. I think the first way in which business leaders can influence middle management is first and foremost by example. Leadership is very much about modeling. And if the business leaders themselves are modeling the right behaviors and addressing, what they consider as misbehavior decisively, but as Philippe said, done in a manner that encourages trust and for employees to feel safe, then in that way they are going to influence middle management. So example is one. Two is giving the middle management the tools with which, to enhance the culture of anti-corruption, so on and so forth. Making them feel that, it is right to report when you need to report. It is right to say no to instances of corruption, and giving them those tools, those code of conduct, what we have talked about, ethics, so on and so forth. So those are two ways in which leaders can influence middle management. My co-panelists can also
yes.
something.
Philippe, do you want to add to that? I mean,
yes, for sure. There's one thing that it's a big challenge, especially when you did not build this mid management, right? You just inherited from another management and stuff like this. There's some people that don't follow examples. They have their own mind. They're already, how can I say, corrupted. And even if you make the tone from the top, if you try to gain trust with them, it's a lost cause, So sometimes you need to think about rebuilding the team. I heard cases where people changed the whole middle management, had a project to change the whole middle management because they saw no future in their efforts to revert the problems. I'm not talking about specific corruption issues, but overall issues that compromised the business. So you have to assess is a lack of trust, is a lack of policy, is a lack of empathy or being close. They think you don't care about them, or their last chance. They don't care. They don't mind. They already have their mind made around how to conduct business. So you have just to cut the losses. With middle management, you have the opportunity to cut the losses if you see no future in reverting the issues. But with the top, you don't have this option. If you're not the board member of the company, you can't fire the CEO. The employees can't fire a CEO, only the board. Or if it's a family-owned business, you have no chance of reverting this. With the middle, you have this opportunity. With the top, you can change if you're not a board member or something really like extreme. So you have to access it's changeable. You have the opportunity. What is lacking, or just cut the losses overall, because it's a hard matter, even if you're doing like with deep corruption states and stuff like this.
All right, thank you for that. There is a second question here, and I want to start with you. So Felipe, hang on. I think this is more. As a business leader, how can I communicate a strong message to my employees? I want to start with you, Felipe, first. Then I'll go to Haroon and Catherine, because different levels of businesses might communicate differently. But maybe you want to share. Yes.
Sure. I think my biggest strategy here is transparency. I get a lot of feedbacks to be too transparent. How can I say, my vocabulary is not really like sophisticated, and sometimes I get really expressive. But this transmits trust and transmits transparency. People know what I'm talking about and know what's in my mind. So I think this is the greatest tool, because if you make clear your stance against corruption and you take the efforts and show the consequence really clear for everybody and have a clear communication around this, this is the most powerful tool. It doesn't matter if you have a software, if you hired 10,000 consultants, if the top management don't have transparency around this and don't have clear communications around how to deal with this and how it's done and how we wish will be done. It doesn't matter. People will observe your behavior and will replicate that. So if you're like paying lip service, they'll probably do the same. People are really smart in replicating behaviors. So transparency and doing as you're told is key.
Okay. Mr. Haroon, we couldn't hear you earlier, so maybe do you want to respond to the second question? As a business manager, how can you, as a business leader, how can you, communicate a strong message to your employees?
Okay, there was just less. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's clearer now.
Yeah, I was just about to finish my last comment. That was and it connects to the second question as well. Whenever you have designed everything, what you need to do is that you need to communicate that very strongly to your employees. What we do is that we make everything, we make the documents, and then we shelf them, and we don't share it with the employees, or if we share it with them, we don't do the refresher courses. Such sort of policies actually have to be reiterated again and again. You need to have refresher courses. And when you're emphasizing on these sort of policies again and again, quarterly or half yearly or yearly, the employees know the importance of these sort of policies, one thing. Second, to send a message across the board, it is very important that you have to what you need to do is that you have to punish the bad behaviors and you have to appreciate the good ones. Only then the message is sent across the board that, oh, well, the organization will always appreciate the good behaviors, the good ethics, the values, moralities. They are against the anti-corruption. This will send. Action speaks louder than word. You cannot do the lip service. You have to actually bring those policies into action, and you have to show the employees that, okay, you are appreciating the good behaviors and you are discouraging the bad behaviors. That is very much important. And HR department in the company can play a very important role in that. And they have to lead from the front to carry forward this initiative and help the top management to stick to this policy of ethics, morality, code of conduct, values, and everything. That is very much important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haroon. So we've heard a lot about leading by example, ensuring transparency, training and retraining, capacity building. But I have to ask, what key factors should leaders, besides this, what other key factors should leaders, be considering when developing their and implementing their anti-corruption policies?
Princess,
Catherine,
allow me to
can I
just
start with you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say
Thank you.
one thing, then the rest can contribute as well. Within the organization, there are different levels of staff and interacting with stakeholders at different levels and at different risk levels with regard to corruption. So as leaders, as we think about putting in place the anti-corruption policy, we need to map out within our own organizations which of our staff are more at risk compared to the rest. Now we need to apply, we all need to speak from the same page, read from the same hymn book when it comes to corruption. But there are those members of staff who are at a greater risk because perhaps they are getting exposed more to instances of corruption than others, particularly say in front-facing staff who are dealing with stakeholders who are likely to corrupt them, so on and so forth. We must have different approaches for those staff. So have a baseline, say, training for everybody, but for those particular ones who are at higher risk, have more interventions that help them understand how they can deal better with the risks they face, how they can deal better with the circumstances that they come into contact with, and how they can report and support each other. Always, of course, encouraging them and assuring them that you will support them to deal with instances of corruption. So that's just one way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Adil, do you want to add to what Catherine has said about what other factors leaders should consider when developing and implementing their anti-corruption programs? You're muted, sir, Mr. Adil.
Oh, thank you. I was just trying to unmute myself and just going through. There are a lot of practices and a lot of policy matters you can actually avoid by the leaders. It's more like a driving. You have to be in a driving seat. If you're in a driving seat and you are actually leading up all the channels, I mean, you have the HR teams, you have many people who are actually there to guide you up how to implement the policies and everything. But if you are in a driver's seat and if you know how to drive it, how to drive your organizations, that's the best part. That is a way forward. So I personally feel that the leader needs to be driven with the sense of what it called sense of achievement in this area, that if you put up the little goals to improvement into your code of ethics and telling people code of conduct and how to improve integrity practices inside the organization. So while you are doing this is a much important factor that how you can drive up your own organization. So again, it's mainly focus on how the top management actually relate itself with the problems they are facing into the in the organizations. Like for example, I mean, there might be many problems which might be going on inside your organization which you're not aware of, right? So you need to be more connected with the whole, with your line managers, with your team leaders, with your lower staff, so they exactly the problems that you can fix up. I mean, your HR directors and your other team members will bring up the policies. You need to understand what are the policies which are best impacted and best possible to implement in your current scenario in your company. So That is very much important. If like, if I'm having our general, just for example, no offense to, my other speakers that, they were talking about the whistleblowing option, right? So if the whistleblowing option is not suitable for my type of organization, and this whistleblowing factor is actually can damage up into the organization culture inside, right? That's what I have to decide that, rather I have to adopt that policy or not. So it depends organization to organization, how you improve and how you maintain and how you drive it up, how you do according to the situation in your organization.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very. I kind of want to build on what you and Ms. Catherine said, and I have to ask, is senior management solely responsible for the implementation of an anti-corruption policy in an organization? And if so,
Yes.
why?
Yes, they are. They are. But I mean, being a leader, being a top management, you need to understand that what are the policies which you're going to implement into the organization are really, implementable, or it is just a piece of paper you are showing up or throwing up to the staff, and they're not going to even bother about it. That what you need to understand. That what you really need to understand. So, any policy which is actually you are pursuing to achieve by implementing them, that needs to be managed, or that needs to be correlated to the organization culture you have, right? So that's how you improve, that's how you do it. So yes, if my top management is actually implementing one policy, it is not about that it comes straight away from them that will implement it. They have to take the line managers, the middle managers in the confidence, and explain them how this is very important to intervene or implement these policies inside the organization, so it can achieve the goals, integrity goals inside the organization. There are different policies, different things. I don't want to go into details of that, but mainly since we are talking about integrity and the corruption conducts, right? So if you need to appoint, and when there is a very important factor, I had a question, few minutes earlier, that how middle manager can make sure or be implementing that code of conduct or the anti-corruption policies. Yes, I have done it in my past. I have done it that my middle managers were actually corrupt people, so they were not implementing the policies, right? So it took time, but we identified that okay, these are the culprits, so we need to throw them out. We need to get out of that so we can implement. And then for that, I had to actually one of my region, I have to let my whole team go, right? Whole regional team go out and have hired a new team, and then I had to train them according to my organization culture, my goals of achieving the integrity and against corruption things, right? And then how you train them, and then you build up a new chain of command and chain of staff that can follow your goals, your integrity goals, and how you can handle them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adil. Catherine, do you want to add to that? Should it be a top-down approach, implementation of anti-corruption policies in an organization? Should that be just senior management?
So I think what you're referring to, Princess, is the difference between accountability and responsibility. Yes, senior management are accountable. The board is accountable. The MD and the rest of the leaders are accountable. However, for us to be impactful and to achieve what we want with regard to anti-corruption, the fight is for everybody within the organization. Each and everybody within the organization has to be responsible for implementing the policy that has been agreed within the organization. If I am a junior staff, perhaps I'm a sweeper, I have a responsibility to make sure that in my sphere of influence, there is no corruption. And that if I see, something happening that I need to report, that I am responsible for reporting. So yes, there's accountability at the top. Yes, there's the tone at the top, but each and everybody within the organization, and indeed within the wider stakeholders of the corporate entity, are responsible for making sure that we are heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And Felipe, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Just adding to what Catherine and Mr. Odile mentioned, the ownership and accountability of the ability to everybody in the company is really important, because it's really hard to have awareness everywhere what all the situations are happening, and where are like corruption points or problems that you need to identify. And it's really hard as the company grows. You have conscience about all the levels of interaction the company is having with external parties. So giving ownership and accountability to key employees who are engaged and are aligned with your values is key to keep these the systems of corruption, quality, and the level of service you want to achieve. So finding people who adhere this and giving them ownership and accountability is key, because the worst thing you can have is someone who is trying to bring you attention for an important matter in their belief, and you dismiss them. So you just disengaged someone. So the next time something happened, he will, I won't expose myself if he's dismissing my calls, you know? So building ownership and accountability in all levels, and give them the opportunity to have seen the result of his communication around these problems is key as you grow. Like when you're small, like 20 people, like Humani is, it's really easier to know what's happening everywhere. As you grow, you probably need ownership and accountability in the company.
Okay. Thank you very much. One more question from the chat, and then we'll begin to round up. And the question is, how do we go about as a business leader in an environment where there is a lot of corruption and no level playing field? Felipe, I'll start with you while we're still on.
Thank you. Well, luckily in most of the world, we have an open economy. So if you can avoid that, probably it should be advisable. You can have an international company from the day one if you want to have business elsewhere where they are not like doing the stuff you mentioned. But I've seen like we sometimes have how can I say, requests for proposals and stuff like this with a lot of companies that have big influence in our market, like global companies and stuff like that. And we are aware that sometimes we're not as competitive as they are, but we focus on have a really good product that the people who use this prefer this. So even if there's like a lot of influence to close a deal with other competitor, the people who operate the software, in my case, will prefer us, and he'll make the indication for the best product. So if you invest in the best product, most of the times, if the people who's buying it need the best product, and they need the how can I say, the final word from the specialist, you'll probably have the best product. So if you focus on a good problem, you can bypass this kind of situations. But sometimes you lose it, and that's okay to lose. You know, I talked with my business partner. It's okay to fire a bad client. You know, there are some clients that will drive you away from your objectives and bring you more problems than solutions. So, for example, let's say you like how can I say, can't resist to some of kind of the situations, but in 5 years you're called in court to give explanations of what happened. Is that worth? No, it's better just don't do business with them, you know. Or if you want to do business with my company, I'm not doing that. You need to do the straight business with me. I just play in that. I won't do the kind of deal you want. If you want my product, fine, have my product, but in a clean state. But it's really hard. But if you can't do this kind of stuff, you have the whole world to make business with. So that's one of the advantages of the era we're living. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, do you want to come in? I'll read the question. How do you go about as a business leader in an environment where there's a lot of corruption and no level playing field? What do we do?
Princess, I just love what Felipe said just now. What he has said is so, so true. Go against the grain, go against the grain, be the best you can be, have the best products, have the best services. And you know what? There are like-minded organizations out there. And when you start going against the grain, like-minded organizations will find you. And slowly it becomes a movement. And slowly you create your own market, a little bit like what the Blue Company is doing here in Kenya. And organizations that are singing from the same hymn book are going to start, purchasing from each other and doing business with each other. So it becomes a business. It becomes a community. It becomes a movement that supports each other to fight against corruption. I think, as Felipe says, keep in mind that corruption can be a short-term gratification, but in the long run, you're actually going to suffer a lot. So find like-minded people. Remember, it's not about, you're not doing this for others. You're doing this actually for yourself. So yes, that's what I would like to add. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Haroon, I see your hands up. Do you want to add to that?
Yes.
Yes.
One thing the answer to your question, a very short answer to your question is be the best, whatever you are doing. Be the best, whether it is a product or the service. You need to outclass the others and have the best product, have the best service. Customer will definitely come to you, despite the fact whatever corruption is there, whatever unlawfulness is there, they will come to you. And the other questions, I just want to add one more way. To fight out anti-corruption, it is everyone's job in the organization. It's everyone's job. It is not only the top management or the middle management, it is everyone's job. So you need to train everyone to fight out corruption. That is very much important. And that's the key. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haroon. Yes, Mr. Adil, I thought we lost you. So maybe you want to add one more. You're muted, just so you know, we can't hear you at all.
Yeah, okay. When you asked this question, it reminded me how politics works there in Pakistan, right? Everyone is calling out that, there is no level playing field and everyone is a corrupt and having a corrupt practices, right? So, there will always, so I will not go into the details which other has explained that stuff, but, they have done the gorgeous job already. They have done a splendid job answering that. There is a two sort of corruption. One is the inside corruption and one is the outside corruption. So outside corruption has already been sent out, and have been addressed by the other speakers already. So I will not go into that. But there's a way to handle the inside corruption. Like, for example, if being a CEO or being a director, if I'm joining a company, where actually, a lot of corrupt practices are there, and I have to go there and have to make sure that these corrupt practices are being gone and have no say there, right? So the best you can do is you can pull your own team there. You can pull from the leaders, of the manager, of your hands, which you really can rely on, which you really think that you have worked in past and have been the best option for you to make that. Because it's very important that you have to let all those elements go out of the organization who are actually not letting you play and not giving you a level playing field. And if you are into that position that you need to create that culture in the company and the organization, then you have to let go of those people and bring your own team and then represent and build up with your actions. Slowly, it is a very tough job, but it takes time. The organization, the board of boards of the organization, everyone will understand lately when you achieve your goals while letting the bad mafia going out of the organization and bringing up the integrated people who have integrity, who have all the values which you actually pursue. So that's one of the area, the inside the organization. Once the inside the organization, you are able to remove these obstacles, and you have been able to create a level playing field, then it automatically impacts on your services, your products, everything. Everything goes smooth, and then you become, a market leader while providing the best of your options.
All right, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting conversation, and I think we can go on and on. But we're gradually coming to the close of our webinar session. But before we move into the final closing remarks, I want to ask every one of the panelists to give at least one good practice, to encourage others out there, those who are starting, those who are established. What would be your key takeaway? What should be the key takeaway, to them? What would be your key message to them, rather? Mr. Adil, I start with you.
Okay. It's very spontaneous when you come back to me, because you always go round and round, and I thought it's gonna come to Kalpe or Miss Christine, I guess. But catching, sorry, and it's just that to just bounce over me. So yeah. See, as I said, the only one practice or one key thing which you need to do is you don't need to lose hope. There's a lot of obstacles gonna come up in your way, where you might be losing a business. You might be losing the best employee. Maybe there are people who are doing a very great job, right? But their practices are wrong, and maybe there must be many good customers who are giving a lot of business. But I mean, if their practices actually harming you up, and you are getting low bid, so I mean, you have to go out with this, right? You have to keep working hard with your passion and with your commitment that no, I will have to follow my objectives of creativity, and then how we will implement them. That's, I think, one of the key areas that you have to be consistent with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Miss Catherine?
Thank you, Princess.
Final word.
Yes, I would say create a good, firm foundation for your business. Build it on anti-corruption. When I look at organizations that have succeeded in the world, they have been built on ethics, they have been built on values. And therefore, if you're thinking about sustainability in the future, build it on ethics and values, because corruption is short-lived. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Catherine. Mr. Haroon? Final message?
One-liner message, just one-liner message. Believe in yourself and avoid temptations. There will be a lot of temptations. You need to avoid them.
Good. The power of positive thinking. I like that. And Mr. Felipe.
Hi. Well, stand your ground. Believe that having ethical posture, fighting corruption, is an everyday task, and it works if you stand your ground. Because if you stand the ground, I stand my ground, everybody stands their ground, and we are building a better world with this. It's not in vain, and there are people who are struggling just like you. And don't fall for vanity. We've seen most of times like magazine covers with a lot of prominent people. After a couple of years, they're like in court giving hearings. So believe in yourself, stand your ground against corruption, and let's shape a better future. Because if we don't start now, if we don't stand now, who will stand after? So lead by example.
That is very good. I mean, the thing for our anti-corruption at 20 message is united against corruption. And we do believe that a collective action approach is one of the key ways to go. And you've all said that in different ways in your demonstration. It's been a pleasure having you all. Some of the key, just to mention some of the key points that has been highlighted. As a leader, lead by example. That's one strong message that has come out in this discussion. You need to model the right behavior so that those below can also copy that. Be transparent. Don't be afraid to go against the grail. Be confident, believe in yourself. It's not easy. I think one thing to mention is that although it's not very easy, but it's good to be persistent. I think that has come true. It's important for small and medium enterprises to recognize that instant gratification is not the way. So it is important that they build simple policies that is clear and that communicates the right message to all. There's a need to train and retrain people. There are need for sanctions and also incentives, so to encourage people to adhere to the anti-corruption policies. And perhaps more importantly, the one key takeaway is that is the responsibility of everyone to implement anti-corruption in an organization. So thank you very much again to all the panelists and to those who sent in their questions. There's been a whole lot of going on in the chat. I can't go through all now, but very interesting conversation. Thanks to everyone for their contribution. This, as Mr. Giovanni mentioned at the beginning, this is the first of a series of webinars. Being part of this means you will be automatically included in our database, and we'll definitely call on you to participate in the next webinar. We'll be doing all of our webinars, global webinar series on business integrity in collaboration with the UNGC, the UN Global Compact. Additionally, you can find more information on our business integrity portal. My colleagues will share the link of the portal, where you can read more about what UNODC is doing around on the work on business integrity. Any final comments? I think that's it. We do have, I also have to recognize some of our donor partners who participated. I wonder if anyone wants to give any final word before we close the session. No? Okay, but special thanks to our donor, Siemens. This project is specifically funded by Siemens anti-corruption initiative, integrity initiative, sorry. So special thanks to our donors for being so supportive and providing the platform. We want to continue learning. We want this conversation to continue. Please feel free to share any more questions, through the email, for which you've received the invites. And with that, I think we just about did well in times. Again, special thanks to all of the panelists again. It's been really great having you all. Wishing everyone a Merry Christmas in advance. I think this is sort of probably the last event before we go on holidays. So that's it. All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you
so
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Yes.
Bye.
And bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye,
everybody. I'll
Bye.
leave my contacts in the comments if anybody wants to connect.
Yeah.
And
Super.
it was a pleasure.
So,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Super. Yeah. So I think people who want to reach out can reach out, and we would share the recordings of this event to people who participated. So thank you all again. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.